Welcome to the Monday Mashup, the flagship show we bring you on the upper tier over there in YouTube. Drop a like, share, and subscribe while you're over there to enjoy the content. Audio versions of the show, Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Joining me as always for the Monday Mashup, a kind of a slimmed down version of the Monday Mashup panel. Our resident referee Mark isn't joining us tonight; he is caught up. But Darren, as always, is here, propping up the team. How are we?
I thought you were saying I'd lost a bit of weight or something there. No, I was thinking, no, I don't think I have, pal. Slim down version. I'm all right, brother. Yeah, it was a rough weekend from a number of different viewpoints, let's say.
Absolutely, and we're going to get into talking about them. There's no doubt about it. But let's begin, as we always do, with a rundown through the results, as difficult as it is at times. We started out on Friday night, Southampton 2, Norwich 0.
When you're going through the results, like if you're going like, Palace 1, Burnley 1, that's nice and slow, that's fine. When you get to my one, just speed it up a bit, like just don't fucking make it drag on.
I could skip it if you want.
Skip it if you want, I don't mind. Yeah, it's fine.
United Watford, no goals.
Yes.
Yeah, like they do it in the States, are you, man? You know that guy does me on TikTok, the South African guy, the sports newscaster, and he's calling out the name. So funny. Get into Saturday then, the early game, Leeds versus Spurs. Spurs running out 4-0 winners. Leeds in the doghouse. We're going to be talking about Leeds, who have parted company with Marcelo Bielsa. Brentford 0, Newcastle 2. Newcastle still on a march, doing well, aren't they?
Yep, they are indeed.
As predicted by this podcast, may I add.
And with the manager that this podcast predicted as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A game that you predicted nicely on the preview, Palace 1, Burnley 1. You said it wouldn't be unusual for Burnley to do a Burnley thing.
Spoil it.
Yeah. As we mentioned already, United Watford 0-0. We'll get on to talking about that later. Brighton 0, Aston Villa 2. Stevie bouncing back. Big win.
Yeah. And I just want to let everybody in on a little secret, because obviously we do our previews and our reviews. And in the preview, I had said that I felt like this was going to be a score draw, if I remember rightly, yeah. But I'd also spoken about how I felt like Villa were trying to shoehorn fellas into positions, and how he was playing 1-9 and 2-10s, and how I wanted to see Ings and Watkins play with Coutinho behind them and pack the midfield with Ramsey, Louise, and John McGinn, because I felt like that would work. And obviously he did that in the team sheet before the game, and then I sent you a little voice mate to say, I'm changing my prediction, I'm now going for Villa, and they did it for me.
You'll have to check. I wonder did Stevie drop a like on the video on the Thursday night when we dropped the preview, maybe?
He might have.
I tell you, on these previews, we're giving out some great advice, aren't we? Some of these teams.
What about the in-swingers, the corners that young Ben picked out?
Yeah, not an FAI badge between us, but we're doing okay, aren't we? Then we rounded
Weight Watchers badge.
Yeah, you get a stone
because he ate the most cake after one of the meetings.
Yeah, then we rounded out Saturday. Everton 0, Man City 1. Very unlucky for Everton. Poor VAR decision there. I was hoping Mark would be on discussing, but I'm sure we can do our referee's part on the show tonight. Then Sunday, West Ham 1, Wolves 0. Wolves seemed very flat in this one, didn't they, at times?
Little bit.
West Ham kind of bullied them a little bit, which is unusual for a Wolves side.
You know what? Do you know what it looked like? It looked like two things. One, Wolves were a little bit out on their feet. And two, it looked like their Arsenal results sucked the life out of them.
Yeah, they both teams that day as well put in a shift, didn't they? Because I seen West Ham coming off the pitch as well. That was a hard fought 1-0. Antonio looked banjaxed.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
And then we moved on. Carabao Cup final, obviously one of the better cup finals we've seen, that finished as a 0-0. And then Liverpool running out 11-10 winners on penalties. Kevin Kelleher scoring the winning penalty, Kepa missing his one, sending it into orbit.
I have to say, there was one particular part of that penalty shootout that I loved more than any other.
Has to be Fabinho.
Nope.
It's not Fabinho's penalty?
No. Now, Fabinho's penalty was great.
Balls, isn't it?
It is, but it's not even close to being as ballsy to Big Virgil's.
Oh yeah, putting it into the corner that was totally blocked, and the other 3/4 of the goal empty.
And not only did he put it in, and it looked like he tried to put one at Kepa's face. He was like, I'm going to take the head off this snake. And then puts a bullet past him and then stands on the spot glaring at him going, don't ever try that again, kid, or I'll rip your head off and shit down your neck. Yeah. And I believed it. Yeah. I was like, do you know what? Hey, how Virgil, take it away, pal.
Yeah. it wouldn't be like Virgil to put it up to someone, you know what I mean? He's not a man that backs down from anyone, you know.
It was quality. Oh my God.
I was kind of thinking as well, Jordan, I know we're going to talk about it, but Kepa trying to get into people's minds, and you see the kind of trying to create that little bit of shithousery and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was just thinking, mate, get yourself focused here. These are mentality monsters here. These are lads who have, in clutch moments, have won penalty shootouts. They've won the Champions League. They've won the Premier League. You're not going to stare these guys down on a penalty spot.
No, and like, listen, you can understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to create any little bit of, you know, self-doubt there for them that they can waver just at the last minute and he can get a little bit of something. The penalties were good. I thought both keepers for the penalties were poor.
Yeah, they could have saved a couple in fairness, couldn't they?
And I was really, really you know, put out by Kelleher's technique, which was that I'll stand with my hands on my knees.
Yeah, looking narrow for a small guy. It's looking narrow for a small guy, yeah.
And I'm like, why isn't he moving? Why isn't our hands coming out?
I was shocked he didn't save the Werner one. The Werner one was a poor penalty.
Yeah.
And I thought Kepa with a strong hand could have kept Konate's out as well.
And there's a couple, by the way, who, if they'd have done their research, they'd have saved as well. Because like the boy Jorginho goes the same way all the time, every time. And Kelleher went the other way, and you're like, you're joking me. Really? Like, in a clutch moment, he was always going to go to the keeper's right.
I kept on thinking, where was that water bottle with all the notes on it, like at the AFCON?
Do you know what I mean?
Remember the water bottle with all the notes on it?
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious, yeah, we'll get into it anyway, and we'll have a bit of a chat about the Carabao Cup because there's a lot of talking points that have come out of it. Number of hot topics we got to go through tonight. The first one, no less, Leeds, Marcelo Bielsa error over and out.
Yeah, listen, I think it was inevitable, wasn't it? I know he's done a really, really good job at Leeds, and I know the Leeds fans, he's really endeared himself to the Leeds fans and the Leeds players and stuff like that. Lives a very sort of a humble life there in Leeds, and you know, he goes training in Morrison, or he goes shopping in Morrison's after training in his Leeds tracksuit. He walks around looking at the back of labels and blah blah, and he's an eccentric sort of a character, isn't he? But I just think, you know, if you're going to hang on to that job and if you're going to keep them into the league, you've got to move away from what brought you to the dance. And I just think he's too stubborn. I just think he's too set in his ways to go, yeah, okay, we'll do something different, in order to just get to the end of the season with enough points that we can stay up and go back to Bielsa ball, you know?
Yeah, I think with the Bielsa ball as well, I think the problem is when it's not going your way and you're not getting the results and you're under pressure, if you stick with it and you're that kind of, there's an arrogance about it. And if you stick with it, I think it wears players down as well. And it sucks them of their energy because they're trying to play this system that, yes, they're so used to, but because it's not reaping the rewards that it did, players start questioning the system. They show up every week and then they go, so we're still doing this. It didn't work last week. Didn't work the week before. You know, you have to evolve somewhat, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, like, listen, 5 games and 20 goals conceded in the month of February. That's soul-destroying as a footballer. Absolutely soul-destroying. And even if you're with the manager, and even if you're with the process, and even if you've got the right mindset, there comes a time where, you know, even you look on live score every now and again and you go, fucking hell, have we been hammered again? You know, and for a lot of those games, they had maybe periods or spells where they were in it. But over a 90-minute period, every game, they deserve to be thumped pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, and now I know we've mentioned about the squad, and obviously maybe there's a lack of money there to invest and stuff like that. And again, this was something, and you know, if you're Jesse Marsh coming in now and stuff like that. Yeah, so I mean, like this is Jesse Marsh getting into the end of the season and keeping them up will be a serious job, but the serious job really doesn't start until the summer, because we've known that Leeds squad is absolutely threadbare. You know, it's missing an awful lot down the spine of the team. It needs a goal scorer, a couple of goal scorers. It needs something in midfield, and it needs a couple of centre backs. And for them to do that, they're going to have to sell, you know, the two jewels on the crown that they have, which is Calvin Phillips and Rafinha, and try and raise funds, because by the looks of it, there aren't funds there otherwise. So like that in itself is massive, you know, to have all that on top of keeping them in the league, you know what I mean? And obviously trying to put your stamp and print on the team. But I mean, trying to get rid of your two best players to bring in maybe 4 or 5 other players to try and get the whole thing moving in the right direction again it's a serious rebuild for a team like Leeds, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what happens is we expected a lot more from them in the summer in terms of business, because we knew that the squad, even when Bamford and Phillips are there, and Cooper, who's out at the moment, I think as well, it's still a very, very light squad to be able to compete over a 38-game season. And we knew that they had to bring in cover, and reasonable cover as well. And we also knew that, obviously, I mean, Calvin Phillips had a long summer as well with the Euros and stuff like that. So we knew that he might be susceptible to a bit of fatigue once the season got going and stuff like that. And unfortunately, has had injuries. We know that Bamford has his problems with injuries. He had problems last season as well, where at times he was in and out of the squad as well. And it's been the same this season. And we did stress at Christmas time, when they were in trouble and they were in the height of that run that was going really wrong at that stage. We said they need to bring in players. They need to find players from somewhere in the January window, be it loans out of the Championship, whatever it is. But they just needed bodies in the door, even to fill spaces and create some sort of a squad there. And they didn't do it.
No,
they didn't do it, and you reap what you sow.
And that was their opportunity, I suppose, to, you know, to prolong Bielsa ball and to give him the tools to get him through to the end of the season, where he can press the reset button and do it all again, and, you know, get them to buy in again. And but I mean, you don't give them the tools to do the job, and anyone's going to find it very difficult, I have to say.
Yeah, and I think the problem as well is when Leeds came back into the Premier League, I think most lads like myself and yourself who have a bit of history in the Premier League would see it as being a really good thing, that we would view Leeds as being a Premier League club.
Absolutely. Huge club, massive following and stuff like that. Great history, Leeds, you know, always have.
But the problem that I have at the moment is, if they do go down again, I think it could be a while again. Because I think they're going to suck a lot of, as you said talking there earlier, if they get rid of Calvin Phillips, if they get rid of Rafinha, you know, if they get rid of these players, like what realistically are they left with?
Well, I don't know, you see, because I think, you know, the likes, I still think you keep the likes of Bamford in the Championship and you get you 16 to 20. I still think you've Dallas, you've Ayling, you've the boy Meslier, he'll stay. You'll probably have the boy Jack Harrison, Tyler Roberts, Dan James.
I don't think Harrison would stick around, do you?
He'd do a season. Yeah, he'd do a season.
No, I'm not too sure.
I think he would, you know, because Leeds were good enough to him and gave him an opportunity to begin with, you know, and I think you'd have the core of what could be a very good team actually in the Championship. But it would still need investment. It still needs goal storage. You know, go out and listen. Let's throw his name in again.
If you think about
if you get Ben Brereton Diaz,
but if
you get the boy Josh Bowler at Blackpool, go and get the boy Carvalho if you can get him at Fulham. Guys like that, really good Championship players. The boy Brennan Johnson at Forest. Go and get these kids and just, you know.
Yeah, but see, the problem is, I think those guys that have lit up the Championship this year, I think they're looking like a very attractive prospect for the higher league. A very attractive prospect.
They will.
At a time where the transfer market is losing its mind.
Don't forget, Leeds are still a big prospect, you know. And we've mentioned it. And if they could get, you know, if Marsh is going to be there if he's going to be their manager going forward, you know, there's guys might come in and go, listen, this guy's had to been at Leipzig, you know, he's done a reasonable job here, and you know, he had some good players playing underneath him, he got some good performances out of him, he did this, and they may decide, you know, we can get this rolling with him and buy into it, because I think all it is a little bit of buy-in from the players, you know, because I think when you look at what obviously Bielsa did, it was buy-in. You know, I spoke the best interview I ever heard about Bielsa at Leeds. I think I spoke about it before. Was Luke Ayling, and Luke Ayling's captain there at Leeds. I think in Liam Cooper's absence, and he said they were doing these double shift training sessions, you know, in pre-season, and he spoke to one of Bielsa's staff, and they had a 3-hour gap in between the first training session and the second training session to eat and whatever. And he says, like, you know, is it all right if I go home and see my kids and blah, blah, blah? And they said, well, no, not really. Like, Marcelo wants everyone to go to the hotel together. We'll eat and we'll nap together, you know? And Ailing was like, I'm 32, pal. I haven't had a nap since I was fucking, you know, 4. I don't sleep during the day and blah, blah, blah.
Especially with kids. I'm not going to get much of a nap with kids.
Right. And he said, plus, like, I've got to drive. He says, when I leave the training ground, I have to drive by my house to get to the hotel. He said, like, this is ridiculous. So your mom was like, listen, he wants you in the hotel. Like, you've got to just, you know, go into this.
Suck it up.
He said, day one, he's never, ever been as happy to see a hotel bed as he was. He said he got in. He said he slept 2 solid hours, got back up, went and did another training session. He said that the 2-hour kick they were getting during the day was what was keeping him going, you know, because he said at night it was a resting of your body, where he said the 2 hours was a sleep to get you through the next session. He just said it was so physical. He said at the beginning there was lads just everywhere, just panning out, dropping down, and killing. And he said, like, you know, you'd look at him as if say, Gaffer, I think we've done enough here, and he go, no, let's do 2 fucking more. And you're like, oh, you love this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
proper drill sergeant, proper old school drill sergeant.
You know, but here's the thing: like a lot of drill sergeants, people are going to go, oh, he's this, he's that, he's a brand new whack. Those lads would run through a wall for him if they could. You know, we know that the tactics don't work though in the league at the minute with what Leeds have on offer. It just won't work. You know. But it doesn't mean they're not out there and they're not putting their bodies on the line. And look at the reaction they got in the second half against us. You know, 10 to 15 minute period where I went, oh man, this is Aston Villa fucking Mark II here. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose the problem is if you're giving up so many goals in order to get out of it. And as you said, with guys that are misfiring and not doing, I mean, Rafinha this season has been quite a disappointment. Dan James has tried his best, but flattered at times to deceive. Bamford has been in and out.
Well, he had that. Bamford hasn't involved at all. Like, does Bamford have a league goal this season? Only he does.
I think he has one.
Do you think he has one?
He has one.
I mean, James is certainly putting a shift in. But I mean, the lack of quality is glaringly obvious. Yeah. And Rafinha, I think the problem now is everybody on the pitch goes, give it to him.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you know, it's very difficult because all of a sudden everybody's looking at him going, well, he's the danger. If we tag him, the job's a good one. Like, whereas last season he wasn't the big name necessarily, and they didn't know as much about him. Whereas this season he came in, he's a marked man, and you can see that because there's guys wading into tackles with him as well, which has meant he's missed an awful lot of time through injury as well.
Yeah, and there's also, I mean, if you remember in the summer as well, he was linked with a number of teams as well. So
yeah,
I'm sure he's looking around at Leeds, and he wouldn't be one of those guys that would want to go into the trenches, which in the Championship. He'd be the guy who's getting the passport stamped as soon as that happens, you know. So,
and I mean, here's the thing: like, there's another thing. When you talk about passports, Leeds obviously brought him to a certain level and gave him a platform to go and perform. He gets a call up to the international team. All of a sudden, it's extra travel and stuff like that, you know. And it's fatigue on the muscles, and it's picking up injuries here and playing on shitty pitches in Ecuador and fucking Venezuela and Bolivia.
Success
a little bit, you know. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, we shall wait and see. Hopefully, I would hope that they would survive. But big job.
Only
big
because
job
because they're a handy 6 points next year, and we need all the help we can get,
man. Top 4 race. Spoke about it last week. I know you had some strong views on it. And as each week goes by, it's slightly different. This week was kind of a little jolt, if you like, in terms of United getting the 0-0 draw. Did everything, battered Watford, but did everything bar put the ball in the back of the net. But then it was amplified by the fact that Arsenal were the last gasp winner, and also Tottenham winning, and also West Ham winning. It sort of accordions and condenses things a little bit more. What you thinking at the moment, top four race? I know you were quite confident in terms of United.
Yeah, and I suppose like I was very confident, and I am still confident, because I still think there's a couple of mistakes maybe in Spurs and in Arsenal, you know, but we're gonna really have to go something. Like, you look at the record under Ranić, one league game we've lost so far this season. It's under Ralph.
Yeah.
Which is good, you know. It's decent, but there's too many draws against teams that we need to be collecting 3 points against. You know, like we dropped 2 at Villa, we dropped 2 at Southampton, we dropped 2 with Wolves, we dropped 2 with at the weekend with Watford. You know, that's 8 points. Yeah. 8 points. We're past Chelsea, by the way.
But I suppose the problem with that is some of those are going to feel like that game at the weekend feels like a loss.
Absolutely.
Even though you got
Listen,
it feels like a loss.
And you know what the annoying part of it is? You're right, by the way. It absolutely feels like a loss. Because we're Man United, they're Watford. We're at home. You know, we're fighting on top 4. They're fighting in the bottom 3. Everything points to us going and beating them. And then you put in a performance like we put in, which Ranić himself said probably the best performance he's seen since he came to the club. You know, at times I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Because there was triangles, there was one-touch football, there was, you know, balls in behind, these fellas being direct, going and beating players. It was, at times it was a joy to watch. But it just came unstuck every time. The last ball had to come in. That final ball that had to come in to Ronaldo or to the area was where things broke down. That was where it was sort of defragmented and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the annoying part. And I mean, like, if you look at it, I think, and I'm trying to remember the stats from the weekend. From what I remember, City had 11 attempts on goal, hit the target 8 times. United had 22 attempts at goal, hit the target 3 times.
Yeah. I had the same complaint about Liverpool a few weeks ago. If you remember, I spoke about it on the show that you're having 20 attempts and you're getting 4 on target. That needs to come down a little bit more with a bit more patience in the third. And that on target percentage needs to go up greatly for the talent that's there. The problem I have with that, and I don't know whether, correct me if I'm wrong, but this seems to be the line that gets spun on a number of occasions, that you go out and you draw with a team and you're going, and I don't mean from you, I mean in general from the United fan base, that like we're playing really, really nice football, but we just can't finish our dinner. And another draw and another draw, another draw. And this is the best we've seen. This is the best we've looked under Ranić. I've heard that about 3 times in the last month, and they've all been draws. And at some point, that has to become a win.
Absolutely, it does. But I don't think it takes away from necessarily the performance and what we spoke about earlier on, which was the process. You know, because I did a little bit more digging after the weekend, knowing we were coming in here.
Yeah.
And like in a lot of the stats, like we've gone 6, 8, 10 places up the stat table based on what we're doing now in comparison to what we did when Ralph came in. So I mean, the performances are there, the stats are there, you know, the goals aren't there yet. They're not there. That clinicalness isn't there yet. But like, listen, David De Gea at the weekend, how did he get on? Spectator. Absolute spectator. He could have gone to Old Trafford on Saturday and legitimately had a clean sheet, right? So that has been a massive issue for United recently. we've talked about in the last few years, we'd have probably been close to the relegation zone had it not been David De Gea. So from a United point of view, to look at it, I know it's Watford, and I'm certainly not bigging it up. But in the last few weeks, we have started to look tighter, at the back. We're not giving up as many chances. And the football at times.
But in fairness, you've also had a really lovely run of inferior opposition, and now you're coming into City, Arsenal, Liverpool.
We have, but we had Brighton, and listen, we know Brighton are a decent side. We had Atletico last week away, right?
No, but I mean, you've gone through. You know what I mean? What have you gone through?
I know what you mean.
Know where I'm coming from.
It was a favourable run of games.
If you looked at the last last 4 or 5 league games up to the Watford game, league games, forget about Champions League for the moment or cup games. But if you look at the last 4 or 5 league games, you probably, if you were predicting it at the start of that, you would have been predicting 12 or 13 points out of 15.
13 bare minimum.
Out of 15.
With what we had to play against.
And it's been miles off that.
From a results point of view, it has. Absolutely. And you can't, because results are it's a results business to a point, because I don't think he's in the gig long enough to say we're now only looking at this from a results point of view. There is a period where you put the process in place. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the year Klopp came in, I don't think Liverpool, lit the place on fire either.
Yeah, but you can't compare the squad that Klopp started with the squad that Ranić has inherited. Now I know there's been other issues there.
You can compare, a coach trying to get a team to put a process in place to go and win games using a certain style and method.
Yeah, but I don't think you can forgo result over process when we're talking Watford, when we're talking Burnley, when we're talking those types of things.
I don't think you'd want to, but I think it happens.
But I don't think, from United's point of view, I don't think it should. I don't think what should happen here is when you're playing Watford that 0-0, and I know you battered them. Ben Foster was unbelievable. I don't think, but where I'm coming from is, at some point, it has to be, you have to turn around and go, well, look, we need to get the fucking results here. I mean, we can talk about how things are evolving and things are getting better and certain stats are improving. But the only stat that really counts at the end of the day is the score up in the left-hand box at the end of the day.
I think we'll get to a point where he'll be judged on results. But I think with what he took over, with how unhappy the camp was. Yeah. Obviously, since he's come in, then you've also had the issues with Greenwood. Rashford looks like he's fucking cooking the kids' dinners, not fucking getting them donated. And a
lot of internal squad shit.
I think he's doing well, man. I have to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he's doing well, but what I'm saying is you have to come to a point.
And I think we will. I think that there will be that line in the sand where we go, okay, the process has been put in place. Certain players have left the club. Other players will come into the club. He still hasn't brought anyone in the door. There's still no one there who he would maybe want to play his kind of ball. And that takes windows as well.
I don't know. I think he was looking at a couple of players in January. I'm not too sure whether he was backed.
Well, I
think they looked at it and they said, look, you're an interim. There's a new guy coming in. So we're not necessarily going to put in place the players necessarily that you want. Don't get me wrong. I know he's potentially gone upstairs and he's going to be internal in terms of that process.
But also potentially he hangs around in the summer. Potentially, because he might come in and the board might go, you know what? We don't know what the next few weeks hold. Do we lose to City? Do we lose to Liverpool? Do we get through the Atletico game? All of these ifs, buts, and ands. Like, if we get through that, not unscathed, but if we go through that and don't forget, I had to sit and endure 5-0 at Old Trafford against Liverpool.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely horrific. So if I can watch United go to Anfield in a couple of weeks and put a performance in, I can then look at that and go, okay, well, are we in a better place than we were, in November when this when I sat in that stadium and felt like, you know, if I'd have been further away in the fish, I tried to jump, but I'm so close that it wouldn't have fucking hurt myself. Is the problem. You know what I mean?
I think the only way he hangs around is if you cement the top four and if you go a reasonable run in the Champions League a little bit deeper. Otherwise, I don't think it. As a matter of fact, I think if you miss out on top four and you don't go a little bit deeper into the Champions League, I'm not even sure whether he goes upstairs.
Oh, well, the deal for upstairs is already done.
That doesn't matter. So, that just gets ripped up on a payoff.
Not at all. No, because again, and this is the thing, we're going through a stage where we're trying to put a process in place. And this is the problem. This hasn't happened at United previously. So, you know, there's no point in putting a process in place. And when the process does not work, immediately you go, oh, well, fuck it, we'll rip it up and go again. That's not going to happen. If he doesn't stay as the gaffer in the summer, which depending on, listen, maybe we don't get top four, right? Maybe we get fifth and you offer to Pochettino and he goes, actually, you're all right, I'm heading to Madrid.
Yeah, but you're also looking at a situation.
And you offer it to, if you offer it to Ten Hag and Ten Hag says, well, you know what, I'm actually getting offered a decent gig here. I don't want United right now. I don't think United can afford to give this to someone else just to get it out of Ranieri's hands if he's doing a reasonable job at it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the reasonable job has to be top four, doesn't it? And a reasonable run in the Champions League. It can't be miss out on Champions League. And let's say you get pumped by Atletico. I don't see it happening. I think you'll go through against Atletico. And maybe with a favourable draw, you could go further.
Yeah, right. So all of a sudden you could be in a semi-final.
Yeah. And I have also said on the show that I think United are only a step away from pumping teams. But the flip side of that as well is that, like, I mean, there's talk now at the moment that he was supposed to be getting brought in as well as the interim manager with a view of going up as a director of football. Yeah. Now that talk is slightly different now. If you listen to the language coming out now from the club, it's that he's going up into a consultancy role and that he'll still be reporting to Fletcher.
Well, he was never taking the director of football role because that's the role they're trying to get Van der Sar for.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's kind of what the discussion was originally.
He was always going in. He's going to go in and he's going to head like the likes of player recruitment and the likes of how is he going to, you know, bringing on some sort of a style and some sort of a, you know, again, it's back to the process. And listen, I'm a coach myself, right? And I've people went out last weekend and wanted to play matches and win, but they're not ready to win because what we're working on at the minute, they can't do it right yet. So I understand that more than most. You know, I had a girl come to me today and she says, I didn't win at the weekend because I was trying to serve the way you told me to. And I says, that's okay.
It'll take time.
It'll take time. And this is short-term pain for long-term gain. But you'll be a better player in 2 or 3 months when you've continued on this road. And that's where I feel United are.
Yeah, but I suppose the problem is if he goes upstairs and you do bring in a Poch or you do bring in a Ten Hag, I don't think those two boys are coming in with the idea that Ralph toddles down at times and goes, you know, the process of what we're trying to do and this kind of thing.
Well, I think that works with Ten Hag because he's a technical coach. I think that absolutely works with Ten Hag. I don't think it works with Poch, but I think with Ten Hag it 100% works. Because I think if Ten Hag looks at him and he goes, well, hold on a minute here, Klopp, Tuchel, Nagelsmann, fucking, you know, all of these boys look up to this fella and have fucking pictures of him over their bleeding mantelpiece. He must be doing something all right here. Do you know what I'm saying?
I also at times wonder about that narrative as well. And I'm not questioning. I've no reason, but I just think this you know, this whole
is it something
around Gegen press and all this.
Is it something you want to question, or is it something that
no?
You know
but
I mean?
it's no, because when you look at it, and I know you'll turn around to me and go, right, they haven't put the tools in place and the players in place to play that kind of heavy metal gegenpress football that they want to do. And you've often spoke about Ronaldo on the pitch, the passenger, and this kind of thing.
The stats say they're going that direction, but without a change in personnel, how much further can you go?
Oh no, you still have to. Yeah, look, I mean, as you said, Klopp has gone through a process where he's put his players in place. Tuchel, not quite so much, but kind of.
No,
and obviously Pep has always kind of done it at City. But I don't know. I just have a funny feeling about United. I think the process maybe in the summer, if things don't pan out at the end of the season the way we think, with a top 4 and a reasonable further run in the Champions League, I don't know. I think questions might be asked, and I think the process might have to start again. And that process might be a case where it's a Ten Hag and an Edwin van der Sar, which I'm sure as United fans, you wouldn't be too upset about at all. In fairness,
Absolutely
you'd be
not.
stoked about it. In fairness, if you guys could start playing the Ajax way, happy days for you guys.
Anyone could start playing the Ajax way. It'd be a win for them because, you know, other than possibly Liverpool and City, they're probably one of the best teams in Europe, certainly to watch.
Yeah.
Now, and from a results point of view, their goal scoring, how tight they are at the back. They're not even just good at one end of the pitch. They're unbelievable at both ends of the pitches.
Yeah. Well, as you've often said as well, you look at Ajax playing, we know how they play. They have a style of play. You can see what they do.
And we've cried out for that at United.
Yeah.
You know, now to be honest, I can see the style of play he's trying to implement at United. And we do look like we have an identity again, which is brilliant.
Yeah, the wheel is just missing a few spokes.
A couple, you know, it is absolutely, and it's not the finished job. I wouldn't be surprised to see him stay. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
And you know, I suppose there's a lot of fans that look at that and go, "Please, no, I don't want to see it." But like, we could absolutely find ourselves in worse positions than having Ralph again for another season. If I'm honest.
Well, you're talking about a club that's crying out for a bit of stability as well, aren't you?
100%.
So that's part of it as well.
And he's been there. He'll have grounded everything. You know, they'll have got used to his ways, to his coaching staff. You know, he'll bring in a couple of new boys in the summer as well. And I just don't think with the January thing, I just don't think they were ever going to spend funds in January.
Yeah. Yeah, well, listen, we'll keep an eye on this this top four race. Certainly, it's evolving every week as matches come by. Carabao Cup final review. Wanted to get your quick thoughts on. Obviously, we did the match reaction last night. First of all, having a bit of a goalkeeping background, the Mendy Kepa thing. Is it for you? Or are you sticking with Mendy?
Absolutely sticking with Mendy. Like, what a ludicrous thing to do. Really and truly, like, and we spoke about this obviously at length last night in our own group and stuff like that. Like, for me, Mendy was probably the best Chelsea player on the pitch yesterday. He made obviously the double save from Keita and Mane, made the save from Van Dijk's header, and those other saves he made. You know, not necessarily that Chelsea didn't have chances, but for me, Mendy made all the top saves yesterday. Even, like, you know, psychologically, if I'm taking a penalty, do I want to take it against a smaller guy or a much bigger guy who fills the goal? Like, Mendy's got the wingspan of a 7'3". Do you know what I mean? And
coming off the AFCON win on penalties.
He's high on confidence. Like, it's just a mental decision. And the boy Kepa, you know, he really flatters to deceive for me, I have to say. He obviously doesn't come off in the Carabao a few years ago to be replaced by somebody for penalties. They lose. He then comes on to replace somebody for penalties. They lose.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have him near the bleeding squad at this rate.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, like, especially with a cup final at Wembley and such a 90,000 people, raucous crowd, Chelsea versus Liverpool. I'm thinking, like, you have to get a feel for that game, don't you? You have to kind of let that energy come into you to be on your pump kind of thing. And I was thinking with Kepa, if this was the plan that he was going to do the penalties, I was thinking, well, bring him on at the start of extra time and let him get that feel for the game and everything. No.
Hold on there. Hold on. Why didn't they stick him on for the extra time?
Well, actually, funny enough, my first point should have been he should have actually played because he was the keeper that was playing in the run of like Kelleher. So he should have played the game, first of all.
But you want to win the trophy. Who do you play? Your best players?
Well, he was good enough for them in the World Club Cup as well. He played out there as well till Mendy showed up for the final game.
Yeah, but he's only ever playing when either Mendy's not there or they're giving him a game, i.e. in the earlier rounds against Accrington Stanley. Like, do you know what I mean? So Chelsea's number one goalkeeper is Edward Mendy. When
Well,
Chelsea played our biggest games, Edward Mendy should play. And to think that, why didn't he make the change? Yeah, going at full time, going into the thing, because they were afraid he'd cough one up because he's done it enough times. They didn't want to have him in there for half an hour, knowing that they could have Mendy and he could be a match winner for them and they could nick it.
Well, I loved the conversation then that was had with Klopp when he was asked about the goalkeeping situation, and he turned around and he said, "Not only am I the manager of a football club, but I'm also a human being, and the right thing to do was to play Caoimhín Kelleher." And I like that. It's admirable. And I know you might turn around and go, yeah, well, if it went to shit yesterday and he offered it up on a plate, would you still feel the same? But I think if you've played a keeper through those earlier rounds, I don't like the idea. I know who's your number one. Alisson's our number one keeper. And yeah, you'll make a case yesterday for saying, well, Alisson should have played. It's a big final, it's a trophy and stuff like that. But I just don't think if the keeper that has got you to the dance isn't good enough to still dance at the end.
I'll make a case, and here's the case I'll make for that. Yeah, I would say there's far less of a gap between Caoimhín Kelleher and Alisson than there is Edward Mendy and Kepa.
But when Kepa's come in this season, I know at times, I know under Frank and everything, he had like a nightmare scenario. But I think in recent times when he's come in, and I made the point last night on the match reaction, when he's come in recent times, he's done decent. He's done okay.
He's done okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done okay. But I mean, how would you say Kelleher has been when he's been in for Liverpool?
I think he's done it. I think he's done exceptional as well. But I think at times as well. But I think at times as well, at times you look at his distribution a little bit and stuff like that, and it's a little bit questionable in some of those earlier rounds as well. But what I'm saying is, I know where you're coming from, but I'm just saying.
Now here's the thing, by the way. Let's not forget, from a distribution point of view, other than Ederson and Alisson, the two boys are light years ahead of everyone else.
Yeah,
absolutely light years. I would say possibly behind the two boys is Jose Sa. Awesome. We've seen he's had a couple of assists this season.
He was brilliant even yesterday against West Ham. He was unbelievable
with his distribution. But other than that, like David De Gea, for as good a goalkeeper as he is, his distribution is shocking.
Yeah, just shot stopping is unbelievable.
Shocking. His shot stopping is tops, but his distribution is very poor. I would say Mendy's distribution is quite poor as well. Yeah. There's a lot of good goalkeepers in that league. Hugo Lloris, really good goalkeeper. Really poor distribution. Martin Dubravka, like we can go on and on with the list here. Fabianski, Areola, the boy Fraser Foster at Southampton can just about kick a ball. He's that poor with his feet.
Yeah.
And so with Alisson and with Ederson, like they really are, and maybe with Sa, like those three lads are miles away and light years ahead of the rest of the lads with their feet. So you will obviously notice that when you've got somebody to distribute so well. But I mean, from a goalkeeping point of view, Kelleher, when he's come in at Liverpool, has been exceptional for my money, I have to say. He really has. He
also, generally speaking, has a very good four in front of him as well. So we have to allow for that as well.
Absolutely.
Not that Chelsea doesn't. Chelsea do as well. But
do.
I loved Alisson as well. Alisson turned around and he was asked about it as well. And he says, it's absolutely brilliant that Caoimhín now has a chance to get his picture. They have a big mural at the training ground of all the goalkeepers that have won trophies for Liverpool. And now Caoimhín's going to go on that. So he was congratulating them at the end and all, saying how brilliant it was. So it really shows the family and the unity that's there. You know what I mean? He could have come on and says, I was really pissed. I'd love to play in the final, but he was stoked.
And you know what? That's not an easy thing to get.
No.
That's not an easy thing to get.
Comes from the top. Comes from the top, doesn't it?
And it does. And I have to be honest with you. And, fellas might say, oh, yeah, well, you this or you that. I never, ever once in my whole life liked the bloke who was getting in ahead of me. Never.
Yeah.
Because it was my spot. And I was working me me socks off for that spot, and like if a bloke would have fallen over and broken his arm, I'd have been fucking delighted because I'd have gone, here's me chance.
Yeah.
Here's me chance. And now I take it. Because it's, football is doggy dog. It really is.
Yeah.
So for Alison to speak like that about Kelleher and stuff like that, it'll tell you listen, I obviously wasn't going to get into the Jurgen Klopp squad with the way I operate, but that's a different day.
It's neither here nor there.
That's neither here nor there,
Yeah. We were going to have a quick look at VAR. Obviously, Mark isn't with us tonight, so he would have had some interesting thoughts on it. I'm sure he'll watch the episode and drop it into the comments anyway. Two decisions I wanted to talk about, and we've touched on them already because we've already touched on the relegation battle with Leeds and Everton and all. Yeah. But the Man City handball 100%, penalty 100%.
150% handball.
150%, yeah. I totally agree.
Let's just touch on that now. Because, I waited all week for this to happen. I waited all week. And actually, if anyone would like to go back and watch last week's Monday matchup, I would almost say I had my crystal ball out and I seen this happening based on the level of arrogance that this guy, again, back to our friend, Paul Tierney, showed. He was abysmal at Ellen Road in the United Leeds game. And he was abysmal at Goodison Park in the Everton City game. Abysmal. He's absolutely... Now, here's the thing. With the City one being that much of a howler, if he gets a game this weekend, other than in the Championship, I'll be shocked. I'll be absolutely shocked.
Yeah, there's calls for it to be reviewed. It's ridiculous now because it's weekly now at this stage. The other one that I think we'll probably both agree on as well, the Naby Keita, Chalobah coming together, the challenge. We found out today that Chalobah ended up getting either 6 or 8 stitches just below his groin, where the boot went in. I think when you look at it in full pelt, I think it's two guys going in old-fashioned to go and get a ball. I think momentum brings it in, but I know Mark often talks about player welfare and danger and all that kind of stuff. I think if it's a league game, I think it's a red card. I think because of the spectacle of what it was, and I know we turn around and go, well, if it was a red card in a league game, it should be a red card in a cup final. It doesn't matter because the incident is the incident. But when you go back and you look at it in slow motion through VAR, which is what they did, it looked really bad. And we've often said that in slow motion, how bad they look. But in actual speed, it's two guys going for a ball coming together.
Again, obviously we're privy to what goes on behind the scenes here. I was the first person to put it up, and I was like, because I was watching the game, it was a super game of football. Really, really enjoyed it from a neutral point of view, I have to say. I thought Liverpool were excellent. I thought Chelsea were excellent. But my God, what do you have to do? I sat in this exact same seat where I'm sitting right now. My wife was on the other chair. My eldest lad was here watching it, and the youngest guy was up at the bar there having his dinner watching it. The youngest guy, 6 years of age, saw it and went, "Oh God, that hurt!" Right, and I went, "Holy shit!" And I played it back once, twice, and I went, "What? Why aren't we seeing a red card here? It's an awful decision." And I get your point about if it was a league game, but it's a red card all day long. League game. It's a charity shield game. If the two boys playing down the park, if somebody's playing, heads and volleys down the cul-de-sac, that's a red card. Go home, kid.
But you know what the issue was? The issue was that within the game, I think beforehand, with I think the ref was Stuart Atwell, was the ref, as far as I know. He had let a number of cynical and professional fouls go till that point and not be carded. And I think if you look at the game, actually, the first real professional foul that he carded was Kovacic. And a number of these players actually could have seen the dressing room. I know Kante got away with a couple of them as well, just cynical professional fouls of that. And that doesn't justify the Keita Chalobah coming together either. I think on another day, I think it's a red card. But I just think it's a strange one. I think what happens is if you start out refereeing this and you let a few things slide and you're gonna let it get a bit physical, like what you mentioned at
A la,
Leeds.
a la Paul Tierney at Leeds, but I still don't think it's an excuse. I think it's a shocking decision, I have to say. I really do. You know, and I hadn't actually heard that the boy Chalobah ended up having to get stitches, you know, just below the groin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So obviously we wish him well, because I felt like he had a good game yesterday, the boy Chalobah. He's got a big future ahead of him. I really like the kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's unfortunate, obviously. But I mean, like, you mentioned it just a couple of minutes ago when we spoke about this, and you said Mark quite regularly uses the phrase player welfare. Sorry, man. That's...
I suppose when you look at it as well, the two boys were going for the ball. They weren't necessarily looking at each other. You know, when you look at it, you know what I mean? And I just think, and I don't think Keita's not a dirty player either. Like,
no. But we spoke about the speed that these guys move at, and how,
and it's only a fraction.
When a fraction, all of a sudden you're going, that's a really bad tackle with a fraction, because of the speed that somebody moves or changes direction or takes a touch at. And if they touch the ball away from you and you put that tackle in, you can look really, really silly really quickly. And I think when you're going up, when you lift your leg that high to go in for a challenge, be it on either side of the ball, because in Keita's defence, as you say, they both gone in like that.
Yeah, and both legs were up. Because if you look at when he contacts them on the inside, like, both legs are up.
The difference is one of them puts their foot on the ball, and one of them puts their foot on his balls.
Yeah, I think the difference was that Chalobah's 6'3" and Keita's 5'6", so his legs are slightly shorter as well. So what happened was Chalobah's leg came across first, and Keita, as he was coming across, went into Chalobah's leg. But I do think on another day it's a red card, and I think it's probably a red card all day. I think it was a bad decision, but I think what happens is the precedent is set early in the game where you see professional fouls being let slide and not being booked and stuff like that, and it's no defense to the Keita challenge, really, you know.
Oh, and listen, like you said, you know, I think what probably serves him well is the fact he's not a dirty player. You know, he's not a guy that's going out to main fellas week to week. You know, so I don't necessarily think he's gone in to do it, and I wouldn't expect him to go in and do anyone like that. But it's definitely, it's poor, you know, it really is.
Yeah. Okay, we need to, before we get into one of the main topics that we want to talk about, Hasselbein came out yesterday and he said Thiago Silva's a better defender than Virgil van Dijk. I thought it was an interesting comment, because I think I have a lot of admiration for both these guys. I think they're absolutely both amazing and the epitome of what central defenders are. The more I see Thiago Silva, the more I think he's like a fine wine, you know, and it's a shame he's only come to the Premier League now in the kind of twilight years of his career, because I think if we had him in here 10 years ago, man, he would have been amazing. But Van Dijk as well is another level as well, isn't it? And it's unfair to draw comparisons between the two, because Van Dijk is incredible as well, isn't he?
I think for me here, the biggest culprit in this is Sky, who allowed Jimmy to go on air under the influence of drugs and make a fucking statement like that. Because, and again, I don't necessarily like bigging up Jurgen Klopp. I don't necessarily like bigging up Pep Guardiola, because as a Man United fan, it's not very easy. And bigging up Liverpool players and whatever. But, you know, Virgil van Dijk is the best centre-back in world football. Period. That's it. He is absolutely phenomenal. He's a phenomenal leader. He's a phenomenal communicator. He's phenomenal with his aerial attack. He's phenomenal with his aerial defense. I don't think I've ever seen the guy have to break sweat to go and get to anyone. His positional sense is excellent. He's quick. He's strong. He is just, you know, like, imagine what kind of card they're going to make from on FIFA when he retires. You know, when they put him into the, I got a legend card, or I got a whatever these cards are called. Like, is this not going to be 99 or something like this?
And that's after being a year out with an injury, a career-ending injury nearly, and people question him coming back. Are we going to get the same Van Dijk and stuff?
Well, I mean, I don't mind the people question him, because it's a massive injury, and as you say, you've got to really go about things a certain way to get back to the same sort of level you were at before. But he absolutely has.
And took time this season. Took time this season to get back there as well, because he did have a couple of performances himself that were questionable earlier.
Away to Brentford and stuff like that. Yeah. There was a couple of bogey games and stuff like that, but he is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. He's a guy. When he was at Celtic, I screamed and kicked and clapped on the floor for United to sign him. He went to Southampton. And he did the exact same thing when he was at Southampton. And he went to Liverpool. And you're like, fucking hell, man. How is nobody seeing this? Like, this kid. And it happens regularly. Like, there's kids out there and you can see them and you're going, we need to get all over this before we miss the boat on them. And we always tend to go in a different direction. And, like, to think we've Harry Maguire and you Virgil van Dijk and we paid more. Like, that's scary.
Yeah, I was also impressed yesterday, the shrewd business that we did. Luis Diaz looks like he's been playing for Liverpool for the last 5 years, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was excellent. Really, really was. Has gone in there seamlessly and transitioned into the side, you haven't seen the best of him, but I just think you can already see why Liverpool couldn't allow him to go to Spurs. And that's exactly my point when I speak about Van Dijk. To a degree, United allowed him go from Celtic to Southampton. They allowed him to go from Southampton to Liverpool. And I don't know if we were in the shake-up. I don't know. I would feel very, very similar about the boy Ruben Diaz. We allowed him to go to Manchester City. Yeah.
Fabinho was the best example. Because Fabinho was on his way to us.
And, you're looking at this and you're thinking, like, how much of a different side are we with Van Dijk, Diaz and Fabinho? Like, is anyone scoring on us ever again with David De Gea behind them three? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's unbelievable. But I think it was a great piece of business from Liverpool, I must say. Not necessarily a team to go out and throw millions at it, especially in the January transfer window. But he was obviously very, very high on their wish list, And when Spurs came and knocking, they said, we're not losing this kid to Spurs for 6 months. You know what I mean? Let's go.
He was our main summer target for next summer.
Absolutely, that's right. Yeah, that's what I heard anyway. So, I mean, obviously now, maybe there won't be as much done in the summer as maybe would have been previously, because obviously Diaz is going to come in the summer now. If you were getting 2, 3, 4, maybe there's only 2 or 3 now. But again, you've another guy. Like, look at that front. Look at those front positions. Look at Diaz, Salah, Mane, Jota. Like, 4 absolute ballers. And
then Firmino and Origi.
I kind of think maybe, and even, that's without mentioning the boy Minamino, who I think maybe, Origi and Minamino, he's going to have to let them off the leash, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. He seems to have an affection for Origi, doesn't he?
He does, but I don't think Divock himself can hang on any longer because he needs games.
Yeah.
Otherwise he's going to go through a career collecting medals while sitting on a bench. And I don't think that's what you want to look at the end of career either. Yeah, you've made money, and yeah, you've picked up medals, but where were your moments there? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think he'd want that himself, and I think Liverpool fans would want that for him as well. If all things were right, I could see maybe Minamino and Origi heading out the door, and an addition of maybe one more. Because also, don't forget, you've got the boy Cade Gordon who's coming up alongside, the lads you mentioned, Diaz, Salah, Mane, Firmino, Jota. So one more attacker in there will be loads for my money. you know, and the interchange, and that can go on there because a lot of guys can play in a lot of positions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, great. Final point that we want to discuss tonight: the Ukraine. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to the people there and what's unfolding there with this stuff that's going on. But I wanted to have a chat about it tonight in reflection to say the likes of Chelsea and the sporting stuff that's going on, and how far-reaching an invasion like this can have on sport and the impact that sport can have on this situation. We've seen the Champions League has been pulled from St. Petersburg now to Paris.
Yeah.
We've seen most of the sporting events in relation to Russia or Russian teams have all been cancelled or postponed.
Yeah.
But the situation at Chelsea is kind of evolving on a daily basis at this stage. And we've seen Roman issued a statement the other day, not something he often does.
No.
Handing over kind of, if you like, power of attorney to the Chelsea trustee charity board or whatever it is. I never heard of this before. This seems to me to be something new. That's
the Chelsea Charitable Foundation.
Yeah. But then we heard
who, by the way, haven't agreed to take over control yet.
That's what I was about to say, that apparently they're looking into it at the moment to see if this matches up to UK charity law or something like that in all aspects of it.
Yeah.
And I heard today that this has come about because two people on it, Peter Cech and Marina, they're the two people on it out of the 6 that are on it, apparently, that only have the power to make decisions. And apparently that's been brought into question, stuff like that. And then we're hearing that Roman has gone to the Ukraine. You mentioned it to me this morning. We were talking off air about it, to broker a peace deal.
Well, he was in Belarus today, apparently. It was leaked earlier on by the Jerusalem Post. And obviously, you know, he's a native of Israel, isn't he? Yeah. And he was asked, I believe, by the Ukrainian side of the peace talks to come in and negotiate, and not necessarily on behalf of the Ukraine, but to be part of the discussion. Maybe the Ukraine feel like he's somebody that they could speak to, and maybe he has a voice to go back to Putin with and stuff like that. But it would seem a very strange move from a guy who was trying to distance himself from Vladimir Putin, you know?
That was my point this morning that I made, that if you're trying to distance yourself from the situation, instead of distancing yourself, you're creating more of a bond and you're creating more ammunition in terms of the UK government. And we've seen it back in 2019, their feelings on this in the past. But what do you think of this whole situation evolving at Chelsea?
Yeah, there is another train of thought, you know, and we can't. What we don't want to do necessarily is take his character either, because for me, and I know you feel very similar to me, character-wise, he's been one of the better owners in the Premier League while he's been there. You know, he really, really has. He's tried to go about things the right way. He's always put Chelsea at the forefront of his decision-making process. I think if you're a manager and you go and take a job off him, you're fucking nuts. But I think if you're a player, you know, he loves and adores his players, doesn't he? I just think you've got a shelf life there as a manager. But if you know that going in, and you know you're going to get a big, handsome payout 2.5 years down the road, and you might pick up a trophy or two on the way, listen, there's probably worse jobs you could go to.
There's plenty of managers never achieve that in a lifetime.
Do you know what I mean? So, but I mean, like, we don't want to take his character. So I suppose there is a train of thought that says maybe he goes in here and, you know, maybe goes in here and maybe gets involved in a peace deal. And maybe the Ukrainian side come out and go, you know what, we don't feel like this would have got done if it wasn't for Roman Abramovich.
Him and others.
But let's say they mention him. Let's say they roll the dice and they say, we don't feel like we would have got through this if it wasn't for the work he did with us and Mr. Putin and how he put the deal together to get everyone on side, yeah? Because let's not forget, Roman Abramovich, above all, is a businessman. So with the sanctions that have come out in the last few days, with the, the banking system, with how they've worked the payments and stuff like that, this is going to affect big businessmen.
Yeah.
No bigger man in business than Roman Abramovich.
Mm.
Is it in his best interest for this war to stop yesterday? I would imagine 100%. So if he can go in here in his white horse and, ride in and ride out with 2 flags in the air and say, it's all right, we can all go home again. No more people have to die for this, and we're going to get them down at a table and talk, and we're going to do A, B, and C, and D. And if his name gets thrown into that, I mean, what does that do for him in the UK then?
Yeah, I suppose that's the question, because there has been a lot of questions raised, no less by Gary Neville today raised it as well, that this move is really a sheltering move or something like that, in terms of, now I know sometimes there's a bit of pomp to that and stuff to brush it up and click it and stuff like that and all. In no way, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Roman Abramovich. I think he's been a brilliant owner. At times, I said today, sometimes he's a little bit trigger happy in terms of his managers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. He always does move in terms of what's best for Chelsea Football Club. And I'm sure what's unfolding at the moment is hurting him, because we know he's a football fan, but we also know he's a businessman big time. Yeah. But I just wonder how the UK would view it in terms of, you're saying you're this guy that gave up your seat in Russia, you went to Israel, you're distancing yourself from this, and now you're in the middle of it. And I know the talk going out as well, the Ukraine might have requested this and all that, but yes, in reality,
well, it could go to further, to further his reputation, because if he has gone and said, "I'll get back to sea, I went to live in Israel, I've now been called in by Russia's biggest enemy," because I am a Russian, and because I have Russian as a language, and because I have dealings in Russia, and because I understand the way of the Russian life,
and because of his profile.
And his profile, absolutely. And like, I don't know, this could either go two ways, but I don't think it lands in the middle for me personally. I think if he's involved in some sort of a peace deal and brokering some sort of a peace deal and stuff like that, you're gonna think I'm off me mallet. You're gonna think I was on the same shit Jimmy was on when he talked about Thiago Silva being better than Virgil. You could see him get a fucking Nobel Peace Prize. You really could. Ex-Russian going in to discussions with Putin about the Ukraine. You could see this guy getting a Nobel Peace Prize. However, if it goes the other way, and if we find out that actually he was in cahoots with Putin and that he's sitting at a table with Ukraine to get the details to bring back to his boss, then, I mean, he's persona non grata in the UK, isn't he? And it's take your bags and never come back, pal. And if you set foot inside international waters, we'll arrest you on war crimes. So this is huge for Abramovich, for my money.
Right there at the moment, isn't it? It's right there in the balance, isn't it?
It's just simmering nicely. We shouldn't say nicely because there's nothing nice about this, but it's simmering and it's bubbling, and it's, whichever way this goes, like this guy, we talk about it in sport all the time. And even as an owner in sport, he's either going to be hero or zero very, very quickly, I imagine.
And the decisions that the sporting world are making at the moment have huge ramifications for Russia in terms of their economy and stuff like that. I'm sure the Champions League final would have been massive revenues. And we see in Spartak Moscow now have been removed from the Europa League, and lots of stuff going on at the moment. So there's a kind of a corralling at the moment in terms of these sporting organizations and the moves that they're making in terms of sanctions. And in some case, it ratifies what we think about sport having such a huge profile and a huge influence on these things, even from a political point of view. And the likes of FIFA and UEFA, massive organizations with massive power influence.
And it was good to see, to be honest with you. And because, you know, we've spoken about it so often, and, you know, I don't even like to give the guy airtime. But I mean, it's not so long ago that Sepp Blatter was handing the World Cup to Russia and Qatar. You know, and if you look now at obviously what's going on in Russia, and, you know, when all is said and done in Qatar, what are we going to look back on? Because FIFA is supposedly about legacy, and it's supposed to be about the legacy it can bring to the countries that hold the World Cup and stuff like that, host the World Cup and stuff. But, you know, looking at Russia now and again looking at Qatar down the line, you don't know if that legacy is going to be the legacy you want from it. Is the legacy going to be tainted and stuff like that? You know, I think.
Well, that section of the legacy is probably tainted anyway, and it's probably going to take a cycle or two for that to be filtered out.
Yeah.
So, but it's something to be aware of, because the images and the pictures and the videos coming out of Ukraine at the moment are absolutely horrific. And our thoughts and prayers, no doubt, are with the people of Ukraine. There's no doubt about it.
And we stand with you.
Absolutely, the world is standing with them, and that's
stand with you. But us as Irish people, you know, nobody knows any better than us what it's like to have foreign invaders on your land. And we had to fight for our freedom. And, you know, the Ukrainian people are, you know, they're extremely inspiring at the minute, I have to say, in the fight and what they're doing, and, you know, how they're putting themselves on the line for their country and for their land and for the generations that come after them. And it's only at times like this that maybe we remember again about what our generations previous, what did for us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very poignant moment as well.
Yeah, it's hard for the home with us, isn't it? But then when we see, we're so close to football, obviously, but when you see the likes of Zinchenko and all, and he's in tears, and even you see the start of that Carabao Cup final yesterday with the wreaths and the Ukrainian colours and all the flags and stuff like that, God, it really hits home. It was heartbreaking.
I thought the moment with him and Michaelenko before the game was beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Goodison crowd stood and applauded, and you just thought, wow.
Yeah.
Like, because 3 weeks ago, Alexander Zinchenko wasn't getting a standing ovation from an Everton crowd. Do you know? And how people have rallied behind the Ukrainian lads and stuff like that, and the Ukrainian people, and, you know, we're absolutely with them.
Yeah, I also noticed yesterday at the cup final with Klopp, when he was walking off with the wreath, he was carrying it so slowly and so poignant, as if it was nearly a child. He was carrying this coloured wreath.
Well,
it was a massive symbol.
It meant a lot, and it was very symbolic, as you said, and you know, and it's horrific what they're going through. It really is. It really, really is, you know.
Yeah. Well, so look, this has been another Monday mashup. They're not always that easy. Sometimes they're tough.
No.
And we will wait to see what unfolds. But absolutely, we stand together with Ukraine, without a shadow of a doubt. And we hope that sport can play a huge part in bringing a resolution to this whole situation. Until next time, my friend.
Football stands together.
Absolutely. Until next time, bro. Cheers.
Thanks, brother.